Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
Imagine making a difference. No, imagine being the difference. The difference between I can't and I can, or I won't and I will. The reason someone chooses to wake up and strive for greatness. In life, it can feel like everything is working against you. Let's defy all odds and break generational curses. This is Overstepping Poverty with Daquan and Zacchaeus. Welcome back to Overstepping Poverty, the podcast that provides you with tips, tricks, and hacks in overstepping poverty. My name's Daquan Brooks, and I'm here with my co-host Zacchaeus Shaw. How you doing, Zacchaeus?
I'm doing good, brother.
Good.
Just got to spend a bunch of time this weekend with family, helping celebrate my brother's graduation. He actually received his star quilt yesterday and another piece to go along with his cap and gown. So super excited about that. Have family over, get to have a good time. What about
Absolutely.
you? How have things been for you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Like I said, the weather continues to change in our favor, so that is lovely, and it's great for us just because I love being outside. And being in South Dakota, you only get 3-4 months of nice weather, and after that, you're in the cold.
Right.
So
That's on a good year.
exactly.
For real.
Exactly. All right. So let's get into it today. We have a very special guest on the show. It's been a long time coming. I've been hearing quite a few things about her from you as well as from Monique, and you two are very special people. So you're saying good things about her, then she must be a very special person as well. So
Yes, she is. So today on the podcast, we are having somebody who really pours her heart into our community, and she's done it for a long time now, and she's taken some next steps in her life, and we want to help with that as well as bring her into our network and show the people that we know that there are amazing people out here. And so we're introducing Dawn Marie Joe Johnson.
hello.
How are we doing, Dawn Marie?
I'm doing so good. So good. It's a bright early morning. It's beautiful outside.
Yep.
Just happy to be here with you guys.
I love it. We definitely are very lucky to have you here. So we appreciate you coming, and this is going to be a very, very informative episode. We're going to learn about, of course, you're going to learn a lot about us as well, and really just about what we are all doing together. I mean, as a community to help other individuals. So the first thing actually I want to go over with you, Don, I want to know, and of course our viewers and listeners want to know, who is Don? Who is Dawn Marie? My apologies. Who is Dawn Marie? Where do you come from? How'd you grow up?
Yeah. So thank you for that correction.
Yes.
It happens. You know what? It happens all the time. It's okay. My grandma wanted to have a girl so badly, and she didn't get that. And she wanted to name her daughter Dawn Marie. And she had 4 boys.
Wow.
And so the first grandchild, who was me, girl, received the Dawn Marie name.
Okay.
Yes. So I am from Wabash, South Dakota, which is in the very northeast corner of South Dakota.
Yes.
It resides on Sisseton, Wahpeton, Oyate tribe, which is our tribe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, represent up in here. And whoop, whoop. Wabash is very rural, very small, and I loved how I grew up. It was a town of 400. We had a lot of community things that my mom was involved with. She was a daycare provider for 22 years in our home. And we always joke that I always said I would never work with kids. I would never go into the field that had anything to do with children because I had so many in my home. And if you could imagine an angry teenager having a timeout chair like by their room, it was a no-go for me. I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting off the res. I'm not going to work with kids, and I'm not going to have my own kids. And I did everything opposite of that.
You tried to fight it.
I tried to fight it, and it just was in my nature to do exactly what I was around my whole life.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So most people usually say that a lot of people have their different characteristics, their qualities about them that makes them special. I want to know exactly what are those qualities that make you you?
That's a great question. So I was actually like reflecting on my childhood and the way that I had to work really hard at a very young age. And what I mean by that is I am deaf in my left ear, and we went through quite a bit of my early education not knowing that. And I would go through school completely frustrated, go home, and then my mom would have to reteach everything that happened that day. So I had like double lessons every single day. And looking back now, I recognize that that was a blessing because it taught me a different way of learning, even though it was like different from most people.
Yeah.
And moving ahead in education, it was really helpful because I wasn't good at memorizing. I wasn't good at like picking things up right away, and I had to learn differently.
Right.
And so I had to work really hard. That instilled the work ethic of pushing myself. Again, ultimately, it helped me in higher ed because when you get to higher ed, it's not just memorizing things, it's applied knowledge, right?
Right.
So at an early age, I practiced applied knowledge as like a 1st through 5th grader.
You
And
had
so
to.
that I had to, right? Like I had to figure that out. And then even growing up the way we didn't have a lot of money. And that part of that work ethic was in order to have a solid Christmas, I would have to raise a pumpkin patch. And the turnout of that pumpkin patch was the excess of extra gifts or trips that we could possibly do. Our big trip was coming down to the Ramada, the pirate ship.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If my crop of pumpkins was a success, then we could afford to come down to Sioux Falls after Christmas Day and be at the Ramada and be at the pirate ship. So like work ethic, I would say, is a very prominent quality that I have.
Yeah.
And it started really young.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. I love that.
What were some of the challenges then? Obviously, dealing with being deaf in your left ear, not always knowing that, especially as you're starting in school. You're in a rural environment. Your family is having to do those types of things to make money, to go do those things. When you see yourself where you're at today, and how has that set you apart? Because we do have all these challenges that when we're in the thick of it, don't ever feel like they're actually there to help us. But like you said, those things push you to become ambitious and hardworking. I guess the question that I'm trying to ask is, today, there's a separation between people that are wanting to do things and the people that are doing things. Like, where do you feel like that clicked to where you started to see the ball rolling and you're starting to see like, oh, everything I went through actually has made me a better person today?
Yeah, I would say that really starts with my mom.
Yeah.
She is an incredibly hard worker, always has been. Her modeling that for me was, that set me up for success
Yeah.
right off from the jump, right? Yeah. Her pushing me to do the things like the pumpkin patch. I was in Girl Scouts my whole childhood up to early emerging adulthood.
Right.
I was in every sort of volunteer thing possible in Wabe. I would raise money for Relay for Life for the American Cancer Society. We would sell poppies for the veterans for Memorial Day. Like, she had me so involved.
That's amazing.
And she made sure that we were exposed to all different walks of life. She made sure that we didn't, and this is a big one, she made sure that we didn't have like a victim's mentality.
Yep.
Where we weren't like, oh no, poor me, we have to raise money for gifts, or oh no, poor me, I have to bring a bag of quarters to pay for breakfast. It was just, we worked hard, and she worked hard, and I saw her work tirelessly doing daycare, and then she would always show up to my things, even though she would have big van full of daycare kids. She would come to every basketball game, she'd come to every dance, she'd come to every volleyball game. Like, she showed up and she worked hard, which made me show up and me work hard.
Yeah.
And so even having a 9-year-old daughter, when she's asking for all these weird slimes and squishmallows, I'm like, okay, what are you going to do to earn that?
Right.
Where are you going to start? What goals are you going to set to earn those things? And I know that transfer of work ethic comes and started with my mom.
Absolutely. You know, shout out to all the mothers out there. Mother's Day is Sunday here. It's amazing that you have that mindset and that mentality that your mom gave to you. She passed along that work ethic to you. And like you said, it's so often that people have a victim's mentality where they just constantly just say, wow, well, I had to go through this because I see other kids that are just things are just given to them. And a lot of them compare themselves to other kids, but I've seen kids that were given so much that now, I mean, they don't have anything because they don't know how to work for things like that. So shout out to your mom, shout out to you to continue that inspired work ethic and being the person you are today. So
Thank you.
absolutely. Going into that, most people will say that they don't have enough time in the day. And by saying that, I mean, they're pretty much just stating that there's not a lot of stuff that they can do in that 24 hours, you know, and then someone else will combat that with, if you feel like you can't make yourself available or you can't get yourself to something, it's probably not important to you. Now, you do so much around the community. I want to know exactly, how do you not only make time in the day for yourself, but how do you also do that with all the other things that you're involved in?
Yeah, it's a practiced art. I mean, you have to get down a schedule that your body will follow to ensure that you're staying on pace. So I'm a very early morning person. I don't see the weekday as a work day. I think the entire week is an opportunity to work and get things done, even on weekends. And I start right away in the morning. If I'm not up by 4, it's 4:15, 4:30.
Yeah.
Start with movement. That's really important for me to get my body moving, because ultimately it's my only alone time. It's my only space to do what I need to do for myself, whether it's working out, whether it's starting with my meditation app, getting some laundry done and listening to music and just zoning out for a minute, whatever that looks like. It starts right away in the morning. And then it goes right into the day, getting Rain up early, having a little time with her before school, dropping her off for school, and then the day goes. And I have a very calculated schedule, color-coded schedule to see like where I'm going to be, that I look at in the morning, so I know how to prepare for my day, and even the night before. Time can be on your side.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really can. You have to be intentional either the night before, the morning of, looking at what you have ahead. I like my organized color coding things, so I know kind of what hat I'm wearing for the day.
Yeah.
Or if I need multiple hats that day, especially with running an election, having a full-time job, being a mom, volunteering, like all that's coded differently.
Right.
And does it take time to master that? Yes. But once you get it, you can fully maximize your output. If you can get that down, get up early, and get to bed early. Oh my gosh, I get made fun of all the time. Like my phone will say, "Hey, it's 7:15. Start to wind down." Like, and my students make fun of me. They're like, "Okay, grandma," and I'm like, "No, my phone lets me know, girl, it's time to lay down. You've done enough for the day. Chill out, power down, spend time with Rain, get some good rest, because tomorrow you're back at it."
For sure.
I love that.
That was actually where I wanted to go with that next part of that question, was like, where do you find the time to recharge and reset? And it sounds like a lot of that is in the morning, where you're able to meditate, get some movement, and really get your mind right.
Yeah.
So that you can focus on the things that need to be done and kind of rinse and repeat for you. I think that's awesome, especially when you get in a cycle and a rhythm and a routine of it. Do you feel that it starts to become easier to manage those things?
Yeah. It's just a part of the day in the life now at this point. If I do need a reset, running has been my new love. I just started to become a runner this last summer.
Okay.
As you might remember, I was one of the speakers at CultureCon this last year. And for me, that was a lot of anxiety, because it was my first major speech. And so to get out of the anxiety of that and to not disrupt my daily life because of the anxiety of that, I started to run, which helped me practice every single day. And even as I'm going out and doing election stuff, if I know I have a big forum coming up, if I'm starting to feel the stress and anxiety of it, because I do have anxiety. I get really nervous, and I start to cycle through, and I'm really critical, and I'm hard on myself. And when I run, I can practice all the things I'm going to say, or I can really rethink to and reflect on the conversations I had throughout the day to kind of piece them together and plant them in my head so they're in the appropriate pocket to pull out later. And that 3 to 4 mile run helps me sort those things out. And it's also obviously healthy for you.
Right.
Absolutely.
And even though I have horrible knees because I was a rugby player in college, somehow
Really?
somehow I've been able to make running a part of a daily habit too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't want to gloss over that part where you were talking about taking those things in your head and kind of putting them where they needed to go. I don't think that a lot of people are aware of the power of being able to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming when you're able to run, you're really able to get into your head and really focus on those things. Have you ever been able to do that as well, where you go through your head and you're kind of organizing those thoughts? And
Absolutely. Actually, it connects with what she said as far as waking up early, that 4:30, 5 o'clock mentality, and kind of finding your movement. So typically what I do is I get up, I work out in the morning, and that is my time where my entire day, well, half the time I won't even wear headphones when I'm working out because there's so much going on in my head while I'm working out, and I'm sorting these things and I'm ready to start my start of my day, of course, on that. So I've been able to do that just from working out, and I've noticed that when I don't get up and I skip the workout or anything like that, my entire day typically just seems like a lapse. Like
Don't
I did
you just
something
feel
wrong.
like trash?
Yeah,
Like you're like,
Yeah, like
I do this to myself.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then everything just feels off, and then like my energy is different as well. Obviously I work with customers face to face on a day-to-day basis, and I know that if my energy's off and I'm speaking with these customers, then their energy is going to be off. I'm in sales, and if their energy's off, then they're probably not going to move forward with anything that I'm providing as far as a product. So I've absolutely seen and witnessed myself, take those thoughts, where I'm going, what I'm going to do for the day, and just start putting those into different categories and things that aren't going to fulfill me or fill my cup. And I take those and I toss those out while I'm working out. So absolutely.
No, I can appreciate that. Just you saying that you have to be that person for your customers, because even in education, you have to be the person the students want to show up for.
Yep.
And being able to disseminate and like really go through and file away certain things.
Yep.
So you're fully present with who you're serving is so important, whether it's customers, whether it's students, whoever that is. Like they can tell if you're not there. They can tell if you're not present. They can tell if you're not being authentic, all those things. So it is important to take the time to file away each thing to be able to either pull them out or, like you said, get rid of some of that doesn't serve you.
Yep.
The junk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You talk about students. Let's get into that. So can you tell us about your current position and what you're doing and kind of some of the goals that you have set for yourself here over the next week or so? From this point, I'm sure it's been a much deeper thought than that, but can you dive into that for us a little bit?
For sure. So I've worked inside of school for the last 10 years. It's mostly been in an after school setting where I was a director or a community outreach coordinator, managing grants, offering different outreach supports. I did quite a few years, Enemy Swim.
Okay. Where's that at?
That is by the Sisseton area up north by Wabae.
Okay.
And then Summit, that is the very northeast corner too. Some people say it's the Bermuda Triangle of South Dakota because of the weather. It's like always foggy and blizzarding. And if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And I ran and started a program there after school as well. And we received like national recognition through the Department of Education for how well that program was ran, which was pretty incredible. We had,
just gave me chills.
I know,
Right.
we had a lot of different legislators that came and visited us, and I loved it. I loved working like that. But I moved to Sioux Falls during the pandemic after I received my master's in social work to give Rain an opportunity to get off the reservation and to get out of a rural space, just because, and not that there's anything wrong with it. I just wanted a life different for her and to see what that would look like. And so I received an opportunity to work at Joe Foss, the Axtell Park building, which I know now that you're familiar with.
Yeah, yep.
So cool that we both have worked there.
I know.
And I was the career technical education and community outreach coordinator for 2 years there. And so I would help students bridge and emerge into society after graduation or leading up to graduation by helping them get internships, job shadows, different career opportunities, and just help them get into society, welcomed, get connected. And I did that. And I also helped them with getting the Leaders of Tomorrow program, which I know we can dive into that too in a little bit. But I started that, but now I am the director of leadership and culture for the South Dakota After School Network.
Okay.
So I have been doing this role for a year. I left the Sioux Falls School District a year ago to step into this role. I was on their leadership board for 6-7 years.
Oh, okay.
And when the After School Network received enough dollars to start paying people to do some of the volunteer things that I was doing for the network, like host a day at the Capitol for Children's Day. We had a lot of advocacy things that I would do as a volunteer. And when they came to me and said, hey, would you want to get paid to do those things now? I'm like, yes, sign me up.
Right.
So I've only been in this position for a year, but the impact report that we just put out of how much we've accomplished as a network, because we're a party of 5, has been incredible. And I just got done speaking in Palm Springs and was in San Antonio reporting out all the great work that we're doing as a network and impacting not just Sioux Falls area, but rural spaces like all the tribes. Last summer, I took a STEM trailer, like a horse trailer, filled with STEAM activities.
Yeah.
And we went to a bunch of powwows.
Wow.
And we took those trailers and I walked through the parade in my ribbon skirt, and all the little girls were like, are you a princess? And I'm like, yeah, come down and see me. Let's play and hang out. And so to be able to walk that, have the STEM activities going on, show little girls, Native girls, that they can be an engineer.
Right.
They can do STEM. They can work with their hands too. Like recognizing that I might have just inspired the next grand engineer.
Right.
And that has been so cool to step into this role and have the opportunity to really do with this director of leadership and culture as I see fit. And it's been really amazing. And it's also given me the flexibility to now run for school board for Sioux Falls School District. And that's currently what I'm in the midst of right now.
Yes.
And it's only been a month and a half. The official petition came out, I think, April 10th.
Yep.
And you have a month to campaign, fundraise, do what you need to do, meet every person humanly possible, door knock. You have less than a month to get all that done. And that's what I'm sitting in right now.
Yeah.
But my role with the network is very supportive of me doing that, because they recognize that Sioux Falls is building community learning centers right now, which is after school based. So I'm going to be, I would say, phoning a friend, calling an expert in this moment as we start to build those programming. And I have the experience for that, and I understand the ins and outs of it. And also being inside of a school and being inside of the Sioux Falls School District, it's just made sense for me to run. Like the stars have aligned at this point.
I love when that happens.
Yeah.
Right. I have 2 questions on that.
Yeah.
The first one is, why is it important for you to stay connected, but also build a connection for people with their roots, Indian or Native American culture?
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, what was the driving force for you really wanting to get onto the school board as well?
Yeah. So I would say that growing up, I was always put in different pockets. Like people were defining me in the space that I was in, which made identity.
Right.
It was almost like an identity crisis for much of, I was either white bread or I was Pocahontas. Like there was no just me being Dawn Marie.
Right.
And going through that and recognizing and seeing that in a lot of my students, how they have an identity crisis of figuring out who they are. They're going through this alternative school here in Sioux Falls and they're getting defined. People are saying, you are this type of kid because you go to this school. And that's how I felt when I was going into different pockets and places. Oh, you're from the res, so you're this way.
Right.
Oh, you're back on the res, but you went to school. Now you're too white. And like, I identified so much with what those kids were going through, just even from a poverty standpoint, from an identity standpoint, from an educational, like having to learn differently standpoint. Like I connected with so many kids because recognizing in education that education comes first, relationship comes first, and education comes second. Like that was pivotal for this group of kids and all kids. but especially for that group that's in this alternative setting. So knowing what I know, experiencing what I experienced, and then having a daughter in the school district, right?
Yeah,
Like that's what really was a driver behind doing school board and being connected. And I was a community outreach coordinator, so I was in all these different pockets of people, and I met with the current school board folks, and they're like, hey, would you ever consider? Like, never thought of that.
Right.
Again, I've never seen, have you seen a Native American woman
No.
on a school board here in town?
Mm-mm.
It's never happened. I'd be
Wow.
the first woman of color and first Native American on the school board.
I love it.
We need to make that happen, people.
Yeah.
And we
That's
say
amazing.
it all the time. To make a change, you have to be the change.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you to get involved and be involved in this, to, of course, make that change where you see fit, that's amazing. I don't want to skip Zach's second question there as well, so I'll let you get back to that. And then I just have a couple questions for you on that as well.
Yeah, I think she said just having her daughter in it and just seeing everything in the school district that she's dealt with as she's helped teach or whatever it is, and all that's kind of been a driving force for you kind of to run for the school board.
Well,
But
and then to
Absolutely.
circle back into like tying it into being Native American, our Native American graduation rates comparative to as a whole for Sioux Falls at 84% graduation completion. Native Americans are at like 42%.
wow.
Yeah. And for me, that's like, how are we not in a state of crisis?
Right.
That to me is
That's a
screaming.
problem.
That's screaming, help me,
sure.
help me. And so shedding light to that and bringing a sense of urgency into that to recognize the needs that are, they're really great, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And even just me being on the school board, I'm hopeful that we will build a better trust between our Native relatives and the school system just by me being a familiar face.
Mm-hmm.
Well, representation is important.
Yep.
Right? Like, and I mentioned it before when I went into New York Life, and I go into New York Life and I see nobody else that I work with is of any color.
Mm-hmm.
That drove me to want to change things. That drove me to want to bring people of color in. Like, hey, look, there's a great opportunity here. Come on in. And opening those doors for people where they never knew that they could actually walk through those doors, or they never knew that those things were possible for them. And they are, you know, so it is important to have the representation of somebody that's like, you can do it. And I can show you that you can do it because I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's really important. So
That familiarity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My question for you now is, what do you see as far as the biggest challenges that we face in the school district?
Yeah. I mean, the graduation rates,
Yep.
that's going to be something I'm going to focus in on.
Yep.
For sure. And then I did a lot of listening, this really tight frame of getting this all done. I've sat with a lot of educators and their priorities right now is getting through the social studies standards. And if you're not aware, the state has mandated a new curriculum for teachers to implement that it's hard to put this into words, but it's just not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
In no way is a teacher going to have time to implement such a hefty curriculum that isn't age appropriate for children, and it doesn't align well with the vocabulary that they're currently focusing on at that grade level. And they're concerned. They're really worried about it, and they don't know how they're going to do it. And I openly, publicly testified against them. And it is a growing concern for us to get that implemented in 3 years, because we have 3 years as a school district to do it. And it doesn't align into Spanish immersion, which, as we know, we have a very robust Spanish immersion program here in Sioux Falls. It doesn't fit into it. As far as I know, it doesn't go into Chromebooks. I have a 9-year-old, and most of their work is done on their Chromebooks. So now you're telling me that an entire curriculum, an entire section of learning doesn't go into this one area that you're going to have to learn on. So teachers are concerned, and they don't know how they're going to do it. And guess what? They're still tired from the pandemic.
right.
We still haven't even been like, oh, hey, are you guys all right? You just went through this whole thing.
Right.
But here's a huge curriculum to implement. Good luck.
Right.
So checking in with them first and foremost has been so important to me to hear from them, to make sure that they know that I'm going to be willing to listen, to make sure they know that I've walked alongside them during the pandemic and recognize that we still haven't talked about what we just went through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is like step one before we even get into how we're going to handle those awful graduation rates.
Uh-huh.
Because it comes down to who's taking care of the people right now.
Right.
And we haven't looked at that. And I'm not discrediting anything that the current board has done. It's just, wow, we went through a pandemic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to go backwards a little bit and see how our teachers, educators, cooks, janitors, secretaries, every sort of space in the school district, bus drivers, they all went through it.
And they all matter too.
They all matter, and they all make a successful day for our kids.
Yeah.
So we got to check in on them, see how they're doing, so we can get through these things that are coming down the pipeline, like the social studies standards. And then too, like as you've witnessed at Axtell Park, we just have a growing need of mental health things for our kids. And how that looks is it comes out as behaviors. Their trauma comes out as behaviors. Their trauma comes out as sadness. Their trauma comes out as suicidal ideations at a younger and younger and younger age. And we are so focused on the daytime curriculum, and we have to test and do MAPS testing and to get state standards. Where are we fitting in the compassion? Where are we fitting in the life skills? Where are we fitting in how to stand up for ourselves? Like that still needs to be worked out too.
Yeah. Like
And building
yep.
them up as people to
Right.
be able to be functional in society,
Mhm.
when during the day, teachers are just trying to get through preparing kids to test.
Right.
And that's not their fault. That's how the system's currently set up.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very long answer, but it is truly starting with checking in with our folks
Yeah.
to prepare them for what's to come nationally, statewide, and then managing the mental health of our kids right now, because there's just a huge need. And I think that's been talked about several times, even
Right.
with you guys and who you're interviewing. Like mental health is a crisis in its own.
For sure. 100%.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love that you stated we need to take care of the people who are taking care of the people.
Mm-hmm.
I think we tend to forget, our teachers in our school system and, our pivotal leaders. I mean, you said earlier, leaders of tomorrow. They are developing these kids to become what we are, to take our place, to ensure that the world is still running, that the world is still a good place. And if we're not taking care of them, then, I mean, essentially down the line, we're pretty much giving up on everyone, I feel like. That is huge, and I love that.
With the leaders of tomorrow that you had mentioned before and Daquan just mentioned, you went through the program, I've been through the program, and it's a great program. Can you tell me a little bit more on what's being done with Leaders of Tomorrow and the students that are in Sioux Falls or in high school?
Yeah. So I was the connector for Think 3D to get in to do a Leaders of Tomorrow next generation of leaders. I went through their teacher cohort. It was the first one that they had done, and came out the other side and landed in their Bridging the Gap community foundation group that helps decide where they're going to invest their next cohorts in.
Wow.
And they had a pillar left open, students. And I was like, hello, I can get you some students.
Right.
Please come to my school and start with my kids, because they have the most need and they deserve it.
Right.
And I knew I deserved what I got out of that program, because I walked away. I wasn't taking care of myself, and I wasn't showing up as the best version of me. I wasn't showing up as the person the kids deserved when they came to the school. I wasn't being the best mother, and that program helped me reorganize even my daily planner. So I was intentional, but then it also instilled the confidence and drive in me to do what I needed to do to be able to give back in the best way. So after I completed that and recognized the value that would have for students, and we got that pilot program going, we did a year ago, so 2022, That's where we are.
Yep.
Yes. So in the spring of 22, we did a full 19-week program with Joe Foss students.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a weekly thing. We had Win Wednesdays,
Yep.
and we did a full program where they brought in community leaders almost every single week. We had Mayor Paul there. And we had people from Avera and Sanford, like really key hitters in Sioux Falls, coming in and talking to our students, just spewing life into them.
Wow.
Just giving them resources, opportunity, inspiration. And we know, I mean, Tamian and Vonnie, just them alone being there and being men of color,
Yep.
primarily Joe Foss, if you don't know, is primarily world majority kids. And I say world majority very intensely, like intentional and intense, because I'm sick of saying minority. It seems like a belittling thing.
Yeah.
We are a world majority. World majority is people of color. And that's how I like to speak that out.
Yeah.
And so to have two men of color coming in, speaking to our world majority kids, putting life into them, giving them leadership skills, building their confidence, connecting them to resources, like that was a huge piece that, like I mentioned, is missing in day-to-day operations of school.
For sure.
By no fault of the school or teachers. It's just there's not a lot of time. And to have that as an option and to graduate that group of kids, I'm seeing them now just stepping into roles that where they're managers. They're like 17, 18, 19, because you can graduate earlier in Joe Foss. They're 17, 18, 19, managing people twice their age. And they're killing it.
Right.
And like I'm connected with all of them still to this day. Like I've stayed close with almost that whole cohort, and it's been a beautiful process to see them through and to watch them step in as emerging adults in the community. And since that program and the success that was seen, they are now in Jefferson, Washington, Joe Foss, and then on Thursday nights, I'm with the group doing a Leaders of Tomorrow at Access 180 through Volunteers of America, which is where youth who have landed in a homeless space or they were in foster care, they will go there. It's almost like a dorm opportunity, and they pay like $500 minimum to live there. And their expectation is that they have a clean, sober life, and they either attend school or work regularly. So they might have graduated, but they live there. And we now have that program in there.
Wow.
And that's, again, that's raising and lifting up our next generation in hopes of them and knowing that they're going to be taking care of us soon. And that those sort of life skills are so valuable to be placing into our youth right now. Huge. Even, again, mental health. And if that's the crisis we're in, this sort of program is going to be vital.
To address it, for sure. That's amazing, because that's what I think of is when we talk about overstepping poverty, reaching that hand down to the people and helping them come up. And it's all about the knowledge. It's all about the things that we're pouring into the youth, right? Like if we're teaching them what they need to know, they're going to be successful because they're going to have those basic principles to fall back on when they're like, oh yeah, I went through that program, and remembering it as like life-changing, you know, because they're not getting that information from anywhere else,
right?
Unless we're being intentional and bringing the right people in to help them. So kudos to you and getting them into the school district, because I know that's going to have a huge impact. And then another thing with the school district I wanted to talk about a little bit is just more people do need to get out and volunteer their time and do coaching and be a mentor for somebody, because there's so much value that we have inside of our minds and in our body, especially when you do go through programs like that. And when you just hold on to those things, it deteriorates. You know, you have to pay it forward. You have to give it out and help other people grow and overstep poverty. So good job for that. That's awesome.
And kind of going off of that, what do you feel that we can do? I mean, not just us here, because this is kind of how we feel like we're giving back to the community, but our viewers and listeners, what can they do to help? What can they go out and where can they volunteer? Things like that. Because I know a lot of people, they have time to do the volunteer work. It's just they don't know exactly where to go. They don't know who to reach out to.
I get asked this a lot. And what I have to encourage people to do is to show up to where the people are. a lot of people will come to me and say, well, how do I start to mentor students like you do? And I had to do it in their world. Like I had to show up to those things. There's a lot of different pockets of communities that have different like soccer leagues. They have different, I mean, even down to the cultural festival or the Cinco de Mayo stuff next weekend. Show up to where they are, and those relationships will happen naturally.
Yeah.
Right.
I promise you that.
Yep.
Are there organizations and entities? I believe you both were at LSS.
Yep.
Like getting into those places, you can do that too. You can look it up. You could literally type in mentoring opportunities in Sioux Falls,
Right.
and you'll have like the Sioux 52 where you can go to that, and it'll connect you to all the organizations that currently have mentorship opportunities.
Okay.
Those are available. But I'm telling you, the most authentic impact you're going to have is showing up where the people are.
Right. Naturally.
Natural. And I don't think that's talked about a lot because everybody's
Right.
very focused in on going through these organizations or going through things that are set up, which I'm a huge advocate for. Don't get me wrong. But knowing what I know about my students, they would be less likely to have buy-in on somebody if they were placed together.
Right.
It would just not seem authentic for them, and they would be like, see you later.
Right.
And the people that deserve to be reached out to, the ones that have the most need, are not going to be signing up for those things.
100%.
So I'm telling the world majority people of Sioux Falls, if you want to have an authentic relationship, show up to where the people are.
I love that.
It's still good to do the Sioux 52s. It's still good to do the LSS. It's still, anything is better than nothing. We're
Right.
all capable of something.
Mm-hmm.
But where can we get the authentic things? Showing up.
That's powerful.
I love it. Another question that we typically ask a lot of our viewers that come on to our podcast here is, what is overstepping poverty to them? Just because to me, to Zach, we may have the same understanding of what overstepping poverty is, but we may have like a different definition of it. So what I want to know is, for you, what does overstepping poverty mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, knowledge is power. You can't take away my knowledge. You can't put a dollar amount on that, and I'll always have that. So investing in myself by way of being a lifelong learner, that's powerful, because that's how I've found my way to give back. That's how I've found my source of income.
Yeah.
That's where I've found my passions. That's where I've found my additional income and now additional opportunities. And I know it looks different for everybody, but staying in education and keeping my mind right is how I've overstepped poverty, because it's where I had to start. And I ultimately didn't know I'm the first generation college student.
Wow.
I didn't know I was going to go to college. I didn't see it as an opportunity until I met my first Native American person in higher ed who ended up being my advisor in college. And she was a woman, and she Native American woman, and she inspired me to go through school, because I'm like, oh, if she can do it, I can do it too. And this is going backwards a little bit, but my dad had cancer when I was in school, and the tail end of his life was spent in Vermilion. So when I'd go down and visit him when he was really sick and we'd walk the campus, I was exposed to what it looked like to be on the campus. So when I reflect on my life and losing my dad, like, I don't look at it as a bad thing either. I'm like, wow, what a blessing to see a college campus, meet this Native American woman, get inspired, have a lifelong education now. That's been my way of overstepping poverty, is just being a lifelong learner and then paying it back by instilling life lessons and bringing in entities that are going to inspire the next generation, because the best investment we can make is pouring into our kids right now.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think of your daughter too.
Yeah.
Just everything that she's going to be able to take in along this journey that you guys are on together, which is amazing. So
Yes.
that's really cool.
So now we want to actually open it up to our part of our episode where we actually do roundtable. So this is going to be where you can ask us questions, and I want you to just fire away whatever questions you have, whatever you've had built up to know more about me, Daquan Brooks, and Zakiya Shaw. Overstepping poverty.
Okay, so my first question, in your opinion, how important is it to find other like-minded individuals to climb out of poverty?
How important is it? It's everything, because I think of myself as I grew up and got into adulthood, and a lot of those people that I surrounded myself were the same people from when I was younger. And not that there was anything wrong with those people. They're still my friends, family, and I still love them. But as you grow, the things you want in life are different than other people. So for me, I had to really be intentional about the people that I was surrounding myself with, the things that I was doing. There'd be days where I'm bored and I want to go do stuff, but I'm no longer doing those things because I'm trying to change the way I'm living and change the way I'm interacting with people. So getting the like-minded individuals around you is so powerful. And we didn't get into it, but the collaboration and partnership and stuff like that, when you have yourself, you have ideas and you have things that you want to do, but then you combine that with somebody else that's on that same wavelength, you can create beautiful things that make lasting impact. So I think it's so important to get around people that want a lot of the same values out of life. So
Absolutely. And Zach answered that very well. I mean, if I could take everything that he just said and say it again, I totally would. But even on our episode, we had an episode that we stated your network is your net worth. So the 5 to 10 people that you hang around, they do define you. Obviously, if I'm hanging out with Zach all the time, everyone sees us and sees what we're doing. When we're not around each other, he is still, I mean, I'm on his shoulder, he's on my shoulder. So the things I do out in the community, it doesn't only reflect on me, but it also reflects on him as an individual. So just having like-minded people and having those people that are around you that have that same kind of agenda is huge, because it doesn't just stop here. It's out in the community as well. So
yeah,
it's very important.
You're the average sum of the 5 people
Nope.
you spend the most time with. Like, there's realness to that.
There is. Did you always have like-minded people around you?
I feel since moving to Sioux Falls, I've been very intentional with that.
Yeah.
Because now I can. Back home, it was your family you were around. You were just kind of, I don't want to say stuck, but it's the same people, different day.
Right.
And here, I've made it a point to invest in those who are worth investing in. And does that sound harsh? Maybe. But it's ultimately going to help me grow and make sure that I'm taking care of my daughter. So
yeah, you have to make those decisions, and they're not always easy.
They're not.
And there's somebody listening to this right now that's thinking about the people that they surround themselves with, and they're questioning whether they should be around them.
If they're not, then maybe they should be.
And that's your sign.
There's your sign.
There's your sign.
Can I keep asking?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. If you don't come from a background of understanding or a family of understanding financial literacy, what would you recommend to someone who's seeking to grow from poverty and build generational wealth?
My first recommendation is definitely listen to this podcast, because that's seriously, that's exactly what we're trying to do, because we have been in situations, at least I know I have, and I know Zach's gone through different situations in life as well, where we don't have that foundation when it comes to that. And there's other people that are looking for that. So that's exactly why we're here. That's the message we're trying to spread. We're trying to give people that information to take to build and be better themselves. And once they're done bettering themselves, like we said, when you continue to go up the ladder, you have to turn around and you have to realize, hey, this is where I came from and this is how I got there. Well, share that same knowledge and pull someone else up with you. So it's very important for that.
I would kind of start in the same place, but YouTube, I think, is one of the most beneficial tools that we have for anybody to get on and learn things. For me, on my path to financial literacy and stuff like that, I didn't come from a family where we didn't have money. It's not like we had a ton of money. We're a middle-class family, and there were times that we may have dipped lower than that, but my journey with financial literacy really started when I accepted a position with New York Life. And that wasn't until I'm about 25 or 26 years old. So it took a long time. I had the basic concept of being able to budget. That's probably where you should start when it comes to knowing where your money is and where it's going. But I had a roommate in college, and his family owned a construction company, very well off. And as we got closer to graduating, I saw that he was going to be buying a house once he graduated. So I was like, And that kind of planted a seed in my mind, like, well, if he's doing it and he comes from a family that understands how to grow money and have money, maybe that's something I should look into doing. So it wasn't right after I graduated, but about a year after I graduated, I bought my first house. In that process of buying my first house, I lived there for 2 years. I worked at Wells Fargo. I didn't know what I was doing. A lot of people don't when they're buying their house. But living in that house, I had roommates. So I was learning, I could buy a house, rent out some rooms. They're actually helping me pay for my mortgage. Fast forward 2 years, I sell my house and I'm able to make $30,000. And that was like, wow, like that's more than I make in a year at that time. So when I saw that, I saw the power of ownership. I saw the power of leverage in the ownership and just being able to utilize these things that the people around me were using to grow and kind of implement them into my own life. I learn a lot by just watching people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm very observant. Yeah. Just be observant. Utilize the resources you have. There really is so much information on YouTube for people. So
There is.
use them, be intentional. A lot of the financial literacy stuff can come from the people you surround yourself with as well, going back to that last question. So
would you put a plug in for the importance of taking financial class in high school?
100%.
Can you do that for me out loud for the
I think
students
that
who
every
don't want to?
school in the United States should have financial literacy. I think it should be a requirement to graduate. I mean, we can go into a lot of the things that we learned that we were in high school and in elementary, middle school. A lot of those things are not as useful as the things I was learning at 26 years old, where I should have been learning that in middle school. Like literally should have been learning a lot of those financial literacy things in middle school. So for the students that are in school, like take that stuff serious. If you have the opportunity to learn about financial literacy, you have to take it. And if you don't, that's fine. But you may look back on that time as a missed opportunity where that could have been a really big difference in the path that you take in life. So I think it's super important for financial literacy.
Yeah.
And if that's something that could get into the curriculum, that would be awesome.
It's offered. It's an elective right now.
Okay.
And I would stand firm in saying that it should be like a standard.
Required.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so valuable
It
because
is.
when we not kick these kids out to the real world, but it's kind of how it is. What are they going to fall back on?
Yeah. Well, and they all come back and they're like, Dawn Marie, I wish I would have done this. And that's one of the classes where they wish they would have spent more time in.
Right.
Because now they're trying to get their first house and they're trying to rent and they're trying to budget and like even opening a bank account. Like I've helped several students do that. Even further back, finding their social security card and the importance of having that throughout life. Like those things that help you in everyday life should be a part of it. And when they would battle me on not going to that class and then they come a year later and they're like, I wish, I'm like, I don't want to say I told you so.
Right.
But
well, maybe there needs to be something for those people that did have that opportunity that was missed where they could still have an opportunity to go to a financial literacy class within the community.
I'm even thinking of like Leaders of Tomorrow grads.
Yeah.
Like some of them implementing something like that and getting them the assistance for however that looks.
Yeah, that'd be big. I think that would be super beneficial for our...
It sounds like you're volunteering to teach a homeowners class.
I would love to. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yes.
That would. Yeah. So this is the part of our episode where we have our guests actually give our viewers and our listeners, as well as us here, 5 tips, tricks, and hacks and how to overstep poverty. But not only that, but also how you would tell yourself at 16 or to wherever age in life, how you could actually better yourself. Dawn Marie?
So I did take my 15, 16-year-old self and I reflected where I was at that time, which would have been the year before my dad passing away. So I was a pretty like angry teen because I could see this coming. And I wouldn't say that I wasn't kind. I just knew that I had a lot of emotions that I wasn't sifting through and I was trying to work it out through basketball, volleyball, and being active. There was so much going on. Yeah. And even, at that age, your body's going through all the things it's going through. But just what you guys know of me, I did work really hard in school and I had to because I had to learn differently. So my advice to myself back then is that my value is greater than my accomplishments. I always thought that I had to get to, like I was always striving for that next thing and an award and being the best, being better than somebody, and to tell myself, you're good.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be pushing yourself so hard to get that thing. You're good who you are. Give myself a little grace. I
Yeah.
wasn't giving myself any grace at that moment. I was pushing so hard. And then it's okay that you learn differently. I was very much into comparing myself to others. Again, I had to learn different, being deaf as a child. I didn't have the memorization skills that all my other counterparts did, and I had to do applied knowledge at a young age.
Right.
And I was always hard on myself, thinking that I wasn't smart. I was really hard on myself, saying, you are dumb. You're just, get it together. Come on. And I just want to look at her and say, you're okay. You learn differently, and that's okay. You've had to, and it's going to help you later in life, because it did. Listen to my mom. That poor lady. I put her through the ringer. Again, I was at a moment where I was an angry teen. My dad was like slowly passing away. They weren't together. They were divorced when I was 3. And so I took a lot out on her, because I felt like I didn't get to see him enough, and I didn't understand why. And there was still all those questions of their separation as to why I couldn't be around him. And I took a lot out on her.
Yeah.
And the moment of her having so many daycare kids in my house, I wasn't nice sometimes. And she knew. Like, I think there's so many people that'll go back and say, I wish I had listened to my mom. And now being a mom, I'm like, whoa, she was right. There's so many moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, Raina's doing exactly what I did to my mom, like what I did to my mom. And I feel so bad being such a turd. And now having a daughter being a reincarnation of me, I'm like, oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. So listen to your mom. Don't be defined by others. As I mentioned before, I'd let other people box me in. I'd let people decide like who I am in that space, and I would lean into it, and I wouldn't step out of that box, and I wouldn't just be who I am. And just as of the last couple years, I've let all that go. I wouldn't tell my 15-year-old self to let it go. I feel like I needed to go through what I went through, and I feel like I needed to process in the right way leading up to the age that I am to get to where I am. So I wouldn't skip those steps, but for those who still think that, you know, they are defined by other people, especially as they're leaving college and they're stepping into adulthood, like really working towards figuring out who you are, it's a beautiful process, and going through that is important. And the last thing, I would look at my 15-year-old self, the insecure gal, going through what she was going through, and let her know that she's going to do great things. And somebody once said it before, that I would impact millions, and at the time I didn't believe him. And now I'm like, I'm going to impact millions of people in a positive way. And I want to look at that little girl, that insecure girl, the girl going through hardships, the girl bridging out of poverty, and be like, you're going to do good things.
Wow.
I love it.
Again, chills. That's beautiful.
I want to actually jump back, and I need to get back to one question I need to ask you.
Okay.
Why should we, the people, of course, vote for you?
Vote for me for this election?
Yes.
For the school board.
For the school board.
For the school board, yeah. So I have a daughter in the school system right now, and ultimately looking at future generations means a lot to me, and I have proof and concept that I know that that matters. I've worked really hard to build relationships, and getting back to the partnerships piece, I've spent a lot of time here in Sioux Falls developing really healthy relationships, not just with school entities, but businesses, organizations, getting them well versed on why we should be looking at our children's education right now and why it matters and how it impacts everybody. But ultimately, I'm asking everyone to pay attention. I can't do this alone. I can't single-handedly make changes. And when I'm being called upon in this type of way to step in and lean in as the first woman of color, I need folks to walk alongside me. I can't speak for every person. And so meeting with city council people has been important. Meeting with, like I said, other organizations and entities, walking alongside each other and recognizing that we are more alike than we are different, and recognizing that Sioux Falls is evolving and growing so much, and diversity is just so beautiful.
It is.
And getting more folks involved to care, not that they don't care, but just being more active. I've done that, and I have proof and concept in that, and I am asking everybody to walk alongside me. So yes, vote for me, and knowing that I will also hold you responsible to help. And I think that's where Sioux Falls is headed right now. If we can come together, if we can show up for each other, and if entities can recognize we're all serving the same people, it's not just the school district's responsibility to take care of this. It's not just city council to take care of this. We're serving the same people.
Absolutely.
And we're a community.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
I got my vote in already. just so y'all know.
Honestly, I was waiting to have this interview with Dawn Marie here, so I wanted to make sure I knew exactly who I was voting for. And I can honestly say I'm very impressed. It sounds like you're very intentional about what you're trying to do. And it's not about just you. It's about everyone else. You know, it's about our students. It's about our teachers. It's about bus drivers. And they say in any business, the CEO is valued just as much as the janitor.
Absolutely.
You know, and I love that concept. So you have my vote as well. And for our viewers and listeners, once after you listen to this and hopefully you make your decision on this here, you do have until Tuesday, the 16th, to get everything completed. But we encourage you to get out Monday and get your vote in.
Yep.
Vote for Dawn Marie.
Yep. Yeah. Instructional Planning Center from 8 to 5. You take your ID. There's a social media challenge of how quick you can get it done right now. And one person's at 4 minutes and 41 seconds. That's like how quickly you can go in and go vote.
Yeah. I actually went in. I think I beat that time.
For real?
I didn't. Yeah. I was like 2
clock?
minutes, 12 seconds. I was in and out.
I love it.
No, it was really
it.
quick, though. It was really fast and easy. Super
well,
easy
and it's
to
important.
do.
It's more important than people recognize. And there's a myth like, oh, do you need to have a kid in the school system to vote? No. This impacts your taxes. This impacts the growth of Sioux Falls. This impacts your future people who are taking care of you. So if you're thinking, oh, it's not really my jam, no, it impacts your daily life more than you know, and bringing awareness to that. And I'm not going to run around asking for votes. I want people to get involved.
Right.
Absolutely.
Get involved and care.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Well, there you have it. Dawn Marie on the podcast, Overstepping Poverty. And like we said, you have until Tuesday the 16th to get out and vote. Please do. And again, we encourage you to get out on Monday. To make a change, you have to be the change. And we have someone here on our podcast that is being part of that change. Thank you again so much for being on Overstepping Poverty. My name is Daquan Brooks.
This is Zakiya Shaw.
And
Dawn Marie Johnson.
Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Overstepping Poverty. We hope you found this week's discussion informative and thought-provoking. We know that tackling poverty is a complex issue, but by working together and understanding the root causes, we can make progress towards creating a more equitable society. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our show. Until next time, let's take the next steps in Overstepping Poverty.